Hey everyone, it's Paul Ward here, and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes. I'm very excited today. We have a special guest, Tom McClain, a Ventura County comedian and the owner of giggleslivesp. Tom, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I've never interviewed a comedian before, so I'm excited about that. So thank you for doing this. And you were in the military, is that correct? You were in the Air Force?
Yeah, that's right. In the 90s, I went in during the Desert Storm era, went into the Air Force and became an aircraft mechanic. I did sheet metal and corrosion control, and I worked in a shop in Hawaii at Hickam Air Force Base. So I was right there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hickam Air Force Base, but it's actually connected to Pearl Harbor. So it's a joint base. And so I had access to Pearl Harbor, and being somebody who's into history and all that, I got to go and visit Pearl Harbor, where, our country changed so many years ago.
Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. And how did you go from being a mechanic in the Air Force to now being a stand-up comedian?
Well, that's an interesting journey. So
Uh-huh.
from being a mechanic, I did my 4 years of regular service, fulfilled my commitment, and then got out. Did some work on planes for a few years, probably about 6 to 8 years. I worked as a contractor, and so I would go. I lived in Seattle for a little while, and I'd work on Boeing planes up there. I was lucky enough to get a couple of contracts close to home at McClellan Air Force Base up there in Sacramento, and it just was something that was very difficult for me because I was, I'm doing a job where it's kind of the same thing over and over again, and
Hmm.
I'm somebody who kind of like has to feel like I'm creating in order to feel fulfilled.
Right.
And so I kind of had a reputation for being more interested in my talk radio device that was attached to my toolbox than actual working. And but so I always
You were
kind of
joking
had that.
around with the fellow servicemen and your coworkers.
Oh man, we were. I helped organize some pretty classic pranks. There's a few of them I can't mention on here, but
Right.
there was one guy that left. He was a big, strong, really like a nice guy, but one of those guys that overreacts when he would get upset about things. And when he left to go to another contract, and when he left, I faked an entire fake book of poems about Mama Bear and Papa Bear, and put it into his locker, so that when the bosses cleared out his locker, they're like, "What? This guy writes this weird poetry."
Oh my
And it was
God.
an ongoing bit that they never figured out that it was me the entire time. But
Oh
they
my
would
God.
stand there and they'd read his poems to us at lunch. It was so great.
That's hilarious. That is crazy.
Yeah, between that and then listing items, because we had a billboards, and we would list items for sale, like used Christmas trees and things like that, and we'd put one of the other mechanics' phone numbers on there. Like, it was always something going on with the messing with people. I had a supervisor. His name was Steve. I won't say his last name, but he had this weird thing where he had to be looking at his feet when he walked. And so when he wanted to talk to me, he would look at me from across the hangar, line up, look down, line his feet, and he'd watch his feet, and he'd walk to me. And I knew he was walking towards me, so I would go to the opposite side of the hangar, knowing that he was going to get to where he thought I was,
Oh
look
my,
up. Man,
oh
where
my,
is he?
oh my God. That
Yeah.
is that is crazy.
I had
So
another supervisor that was scared of heights, and he was terrified of heights. So I would always find some kind of a problem up on the wing, on the the empennage, the back of the plane,
right.
and I would always bring him up in that little cherry picker thing and make sure that it was bouncing real good and things like that. And so so it was always something. I would say there was at least a few daily pranks.
That's hilarious. So you kind of had it in you from a you know a young age, kind of your prankster personality. And then how did that transition to being on the stage and telling jokes to strangers?
Well, it was funny when my last contracts ran out and I was looking for my next thing, I had an offer from Aerojet that was it's a um, aircraft maintenance, company. Everybody's probably heard of it, and they offered me really good money to go work on airplanes again. But I also had two other offers. I had an offer from Verizon to go work as it was something that was really outside of my wheelhouse and didn't interest me, but it paid okay.
Mhm.
And then I had an offer to work at this homeless shelter for kids that didn't pay hardly anything at all. In fact,
Right.
I think it might have been $9 an hour or something
Oh
like
my
that.
God. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I took that job though because I felt like that job was the one that was gonna give me the most freedom to get into what I really wanted to do. I wanted some time to do some writing. I wanted to be able to attend all my sporting events that I like to go to. The hours weren't accommodating for that. With I was a basketball fan, NBA Sacramento Kings
Mhm.
season tickets, and the Aerojet job would have required me to work evenings, which means I'd miss all the basketball games. And I was like,
Right.
I don't think it's gonna work.
Right.
You know, so I,
Priorities.
so I took the job at the children's receiving home, and I, you know, worked really hard there. And I worked on some of my writing whenever I had some downtime, and then it kind of got to where comedy, I actually started comedy while I was there, and comedy and that kind of worked really well together. And then there was a point where I was making more money at comedy than I was there, and I had kind of risen the ranks a little bit and was a supervisor at the receiving home. So it kind of got to where I needed to make a decision, and so I ended up leaving the receiving home just to do comedy. And it was, it's always a tough decision when you're betting on yourself like that, but
Right.
it worked out pretty good, at least for the time being. It did.
Right. Right. And so you're taking that leap of faith that you're going to go out and, be a entrepreneur essentially, right? Because you're getting paid to stand on stage now and tell jokes to strangers.
Yeah.
What was that like the first time?
Well, the first time I actually went on stage, let's see, the first time I went on stage, I was nervous, but like I just felt like I had to do it. And so I didn't let the nerves get in the way. I think the nerves got more like in the following weeks as I started trying to pursue it, because then it was like started to matter. I think the
Right.
first time you're just kind of like, well, if it doesn't work, then I'll know. Um, but I got three really good laughs in my 5 minutes at an open mic, which, if you've ever been to an open mic, that's pretty miraculous to get three good laughs, or to have somebody that gets three good laughs.
Right.
And the owner of the comedy club there in Sacramento, Steve, he took note of me, and he told me that he wanted to start working me into the rotation as a regular MC. And so, like, within my first few months of comedy, I had 2 weeks a month emceeing at that club. And then within a year or so, he purchased another club in San Francisco called the Green Room.
Hmm.
And I was able to do 2 weeks a month in Sacramento and 1 week a month in San Francisco. And then that other weekend or two, I would just travel. I would go do gigs up in Oregon or Washington, or one of the neighboring states. I never went really too far away, especially
Sure.
earlier on.
Sure. And your material was coming from your experiences that you had. I mean, obviously in the military and being a prankster.
Yeah, well, a lot of my material was just about having fun and partying, and that was, part of my um, evolution as a comedian. So I started out and I joked a lot about partying and drinking and stuff like that, and now I talk more about my kids and my relationship with them and things like that, and things that people might think matter a little bit more, I guess.
Right.
But you kind of grow up on the stage just like you grow up in real life. So it was, you know, it's
Right.
cool to go back and watch old videos and go, wow, that's where I was at.
Right. It just your life is a journey, and your material is, changing along with it.
Yeah, the best part is when somebody comes up that hasn't seen me in a long time and they ask me to do one of those old jokes that doesn't really fit who I am now. Like, I'm not
Right.
going to talk about drinking all night. I mean, last time I had a beer was like probably 2 years ago. I don't even like I don't even casually drink anymore. It's just not interested anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of funny.
What makes a good comedian? Why do some people make it you know, and others, I guess, like any industry, some people make it big and some don't. But what do you think kind of captures the imagination of the audience that some you know do really well?
I think what makes a good comedian is somebody who is able to really reveal who they are, who's able to actually kind of allow themselves to be vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
in front of an audience to where the audience could feel connected. Because the audience members, I think, in any time an audience member is at a comedy show, they feel vulnerable. There's always like, oh, am I going to get picked on? Am I going to understand the jokes? Am I going to feel like I wasted my money by coming and watching a comedian tonight? So I think when the comedians are allow themselves to be a little bit vulnerable and they're able to like connect with the audience, I think that that's what makes a good comedian. And as far as the Hollywood thing, I'm not sure how they decide. I think that that's pretty. I'm not sure how those decisions are made as far as who gets elevated and all of those kind of things.
Right.
Uh, Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting in my room on a.
You'd be down there right now.
Well, the truth is so I was traveling a lot because we moved down to Southern California, and so working 3 weeks in Northern California was no longer an option for me. So I moved away from where most of my work was, and being that it's a showcase town where people are trying to get famous, there's not a lot of paid work, and the paid work is usually pays less. So I got to where I started touring a little more, and I'd go out and I'd spend a lot of time in like the gambling cities and stuff. And then when my kids were born, when my son was born, I just started having a really hard time with being away. And that's when I kind of came back off the road. Was lucky enough to land a local radio job in that same period of time, where I was on the air with Spence over at KBTA for a little bit over 4 years. And it was like a good, perfect time in my life to have that kind of a thing happen. So, and then I was able to still do a little bit of local comedy. That's why I came up with the whole Giggles Comedy Club thing. Now we go by the name the Hangar Comedy, but it's one of those ways that I go out. I could still go do new stuff on stage. I can still connect with the people that want to follow me, but I also bring in a big headliner, like a friend, somebody that I picked up along the way in my comedy path, who's a really amazing comedian. And I just bring him to Santa Paula or whatever small town we're doing the shows at.
Right. And you call it Hangar Comedy because you're at the Santa Paula airport at one of the hangars.
Yeah. Yep. We do our shows at the Hangar Bar and Grill. And so I think Hangar Comedy just kind of fits it just right, because you're looking out and you're seeing airplanes if you look out the window, while you're watching the show. During the summer, we do the shows outside, so you're right there and the planes are right over your shoulders. It's just a really cool place to do it. So I enjoy it.
That's awesome. And you started a podcast, a Giggles podcast?
Yeah, I have a couple of podcasts under the Giggles banner, the Giggles Radio Network banner. My favorite podcast that I work on is the Walkout. I do with my buddy Mark the Menace Young. He's a MMA fighter and a coach, and a lot of what the concept is we're dads and we're trying to like balance everything. And the Walkout is when you're watching a fight. That's when the fighters got the music going on and they're just trying to make their way to the stage. When you go to a comedy show, you see the comedians, they say the comedian's name, they come out of the green room or whatever, and they make their way to the stage. So the Walkout is basically about all the preparation that went into that moment, because not everybody can take that walk. Not everybody can make that walkout, but there's a lot in that moment because everything you've prepared for is just for that walk. And so we thought Walkout was kind of a good way to kind of just describe the whole process, because everybody sees when the lights are on, everybody sees the fights and everybody sees the comedians going up there, but they don't see all the stuff that leads into it. They don't see the hours of tireless writing, or the times you try something out on stage and it bombs, or they don't get to experience the family members that don't believe that you are a normal giver to society just because you do something that's so off the wall to them.
Right.
So and trying to balance family and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like just a little insight into that is kind of the concept.
Right. That's interesting. I never thought about that before. So you're walking out on the stage, and it's kind of that moment that you've prepared for, like a fighter, right? And
Mhm.
you're just, living in the moment, and how's the audience gonna receive this? And you've done your preparation, and you're about to find out.
Yeah, it's like that only moment where you're just, the preparation's done. You just got to get to the stage and deliver. So that moment is kind of, it's a heavy moment.
Right. What's it like? I mean, it's such the unknown, right? You don't know how the audience is going to respond. Like you mentioned, you had the 5-minute gig and you got 3 laughs in 5 minutes, which is unusual, right? And that must be the total high, right, of the job. And then the other extreme would be, oh my God, my material is bombing. I miscued this audience, right? What do I do to turn it around?
Well, I think for one, I think that a lot of times you just have to accept the fact that less than 50% of any audience is really going to be your audience. That's why
Okay.
it's really hard to find your audience. I think that's when you see comedians that are able to pack out arenas and theaters, they figured out how to reach their audience, and that's their audience that's showing up to see them. But when you're out here and you're just kind of like doing shows and trying to get as much stage time as you can, you're you know I mean, I think that I have an audience. I think there's some people that follow me,
Hmm.
but it's not, it's not big enough to sell an arena. I'm not on that anywhere near that level, obviously.
Sure.
But I think anytime that you're dealing with that, where you're going in front of an audience that might not necessarily be yours, there's a risk of it not being great. And I think early on, I kind of just figured that uh, a show that doesn't go the way I want it to is probably just a mismatch more than anything.
Right.
I don't look at it as, oh, my skills as a comedian are declining or whatever. I still feel like for the most part, most shows go really well. I feel like most shows are pretty amazing. But every once in a while, you get one of those positions where a bunch of people are around their bosses and they don't, you know what I mean? They don't want to let loose. And
Right.
usually you can figure out why. If you
Sure.
can't figure out why, then you're probably in the wrong business.
The PC crowd has to, behave in front of their employer.
Oh yeah, yeah. The PC crowds are the worst. That's the when people are going to comedy looking to nitpick, looking for a reason to complain. That's always a good one. You walk out and somebody's already got their arms crossed before you even say anything.
Yeah. It's
Like, wow, you're
interesting,
really in a receptive stance.
right? It's interesting too. I think, comedy is it's an industry, right? And laughing is such an important part of life. And, the world is in total turmoil, and it's nice to have some escapism. And, it's still important to laugh even when, the world is burning all around us.
I think you're right. And I think that most comedians are able to convey that, and they're able to say, hey, look, everything's going on around us, but let's just have some fun in the meantime,
Right. Right. So you've got some events coming up at the hangar. What do you have going on?
So we have one show a month at the hangar. Our next show coming up is February 9th. That's going to be with the very talented Kira Soltanovich. Kira was the voice of the photo booth on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she did and she improvised all of that. She'd mess with people as they came in. She still works with Jay on the show that he has now. She's kind of been working alongside Jay Leno for like this entire time. But she was one of the comedians. I've known her for over 20 years. We worked together at a club years and years ago when we were both openers, and she was just somebody that you'd see and you knew that she was going to be something special. And she is, and she works a lot. And she's I'm excited to have her back to Santa Paula. The last time we had her in Santa Paula was during the pandemic, and I don't know if you know, but during the pandemic, we decided we were just going to kind of keep doing shows and then, ask for forgiveness if we were got in trouble
Right.
because everything was shut down and people needed to get out. So I kind of came up with a system where I was selling tables instead of tickets.
Uh-huh.
So you can get a table of, let's say you have you and your family are quarantined, but there's 6 of you, you're all in the same house. Well, I get you a pod where 6 people can sit, and then you're 10 feet away from everybody else. We had the way we had it where the entrance was the back of the restaurant, so we could walk people through without having any contact with anybody.
Right.
And we had really big shows, and people really appreciated it because there wasn't a lot going on, and nobody was willing to take that risk. And we even had like some law enforcement in uniform that came and attended the shows. Where you're like scared when they're walking up, going, "Oh, shut us down." But but Kira had not been on stage in over a year, and I remember she was really nervous. And I go, "Well, just go out and do a little bit, and if you feel like it's too much, then you just stop." I go, "Nobody's gonna really expect everybody to come out of this given their best show. They just want us to try,
Right.
And then she got up there, and I knew that she wasn't going to just go do a couple of minutes, because she's an incredible talent, right?
Right.
She got up there and she did an hour, and afterwards she was like, "I'm so glad I did this." She goes, "I can't believe, that I felt like I almost didn't have it, or whatever." She's very grateful for the being able to get on stage after being so long, because you kind of need that. That's one of the ways you work out your stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And that's
Things
awesome that she
expensive.
did that, and super smart of you to, sell tables.
Yeah, well, that was I just wanted to I wanted to be able to put together shows and not give them anything to complain about, because there was the people that were, and I still got the comments, "Oh, enjoy your super spreader."
Of course. Of course.
I almost changed the comedy name to the super spreader, but then I thought it might bring too much attention to it.
Right.
But yeah,
Can't say
but we
fire.
never had an issue. We only maybe went like 4 or 5 months without doing the shows. Like I said, we did them outside and never had a complaint, never had, "Oh my goodness, so and so and so and so, everybody got sick this week." Not once. We did everything went well. We even took temperatures for a little while of people coming in. We did it kind of as a gag, but then we realized, hey, this isn't so bad, because people seem to be relieved of it. So we're like, okay, we'll
Right.
keep doing
Right.
it.
That's smart. Real quick, are the hangar events the same day each month? You said you do it monthly. Is it like a certain Friday of the month or a certain Saturday of the month?
We used to do the last Friday of the month, but then I started to realize that if I wanted the headliners that I wanted, I would kind of have to go with their schedule, because I kind of got to where I was pigeon-toed into this one weekend available, and then I'm calling 15 people. "Are you available that weekend?" So what I did with Brian Kellen, who we had last month, who's just an incredible comic. "Hey, what weekends do you have available?" And he happened to have a weekend available that worked really good with my schedule, so we did it. Had a great show. Same thing with Kara. "Hey, what weekends do you have available?" This was the only weekend she had available, so that's what we're going to do. And so I'm just kind of letting the headliner kind of dictate when our shows are.
Gotcha. So what would the website be, or the email be that folks could reach out and find out more information?
The website's giggleslive.com. You can find out all about the comedy shows there. It'll have the latest tickets, latest posters, and all that stuff. And if you want to email me, my email is giggleslivesp@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, Tom McClain, thank you so much. This has been wonderful and informative and entertaining, and I'm sure our audience will appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, Paul. Go 49ers.
Absolutely. That's right. Go Niners.